Are we ready for them to start recording, Joe?
Absolutely. You can have them hit the record button, and I'll start this off very soon. Good. And good afternoon. I'm Joseph Davis Sr. I'm the chairman of the WisDOT Affirmative Action Advisory Committee. And welcome to the AAAC celebration of Black History Month on behalf of the Secretary's Office. Black History Month is an annual celebration of achievements by African Americans and a time for recognizing their central role in U.S. history. Also known as African American History Month, the event grew out of Negro History Week. Now, that was a brainchild of what we consider the historian Carter G. Woodson and other prominent African Americans. President Gerald Ford officially recognized Black History Month in 1976, calling upon the public to seize the opportunity to honor the two neglected accomplishments of African Americans in every endeavor and areas of endeavor throughout our history. Since 1976, every U.S. president has officially designated the month of February as Black History Month. Other countries around the world, including Canada and the United Kingdom, also devote a month to celebrating Black History Month. The story of Black History Month begins in 1915, half a century after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States. That September, the Harvard-trained historian Carter G. Woodson and the prominent minister Jesse E. Moreland founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, an organization dedicated to the researching and promoting achievements by Black Americans and other prominent African and other peoples of African descent. The National Black History Month 2020 theme, Black families, the 2021 theme. I don't want to go back to 2020 because that was not good. Yeah, let's start off with 2021. This history is, and its theme is Black family representing identity and diversity, explores the African diaspora and the spread of Black families across the United States. So on behalf of Secretary Thompson, Deputy Secretary Paul Hammer, Assistant Deputy Secretary Joe Nielsen Stewart, and the entire WisDOT family, let's get this celebrated. Let's get this celebration started. And I'll kick this over to Meredith. She is a member of the AAAC, and she will facilitate the first conversations with the ACE students. Meredith, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you, Joe, and thanks everyone for joining us today, including our noted guest speakers. For over 30 years, WisDOT has held a unique aviation work internship program to provide opportunities for underrepresented Milwaukee students of public school students of color. Today, we're going to share with you a brief history of the program, and we are honored to have with us 3 of our former interns who are going to talk about their experiences. They are all individuals in the ACE, or Aviation Careers Education Program, that we consider to be stars, and we celebrate them today as we kick off Black History Month. For those who are not familiar with it, the ACE program was created in 1989 as a bipartisan effort to address the challenges facing students of color in the Milwaukee public schools. With the aviation industry thriving, the then governor created a task force to determine what sort of internship could offer students real-life training that would serve them well later and would highlight the opportunities available in aviation.
Hi, can you hold on just a minute?
Let's just, okay, I'm going to continue. People of color were then and continue to be now extremely underrepresented in the industry, and this program is one of WisDOT's long-term efforts to support equity in our workplace and more broadly in our state. High school students in the ACE program work in a variety of positions at Milwaukee Mitchell International Airport, including the airlines, fire and rescue, airport IT, and the 128th Air Refueling Wing. We have a short video to highlight students talking about the program in their own words. Could we go ahead and play that video?
The Wisconsin Department of Transportation's Bureau of Aeronautics is committed to providing the state with a quality aviation education program. Aviation Careers Education, or ACE, is a summer internship program that offers students from the Milwaukee public school system the opportunity to learn about the aviation industry and aviation-related careers.
Here at Signature Flight Support, we do marshalling, we chalk planes, we give customer service to passengers and pilots that come off of private jets.
I work TSA for the airport. I do bags and also work on security checkpoints. Typical day is loading machine for X-ray personnel, help looking for liquids or gels, large electronics that people may have.
Signature Flight Support in Milwaukee. This is Richard speaking. How may I help you?
Oh, well, I'm a customer service representative. I do billing, oil cells, take care of what pilots and their passengers need when they come into the city. I'll set hotel reservations, call over to different rental companies, and that's pretty much my daily.
In addition to the skills they learn through their regular duties, ACE interns also gain employability skills through group workshops and field trips. The ACE program encourages youth to start planning their future, set goals, and realistically plan how they will get there.
It's definitely opened up the field of aviation to me. I know a lot more about aviation and, possibly might want to go into it in the future.
It's very fun. You get to meet new people, do new things. That helped me decide to more work to become a U.S. Marshal.
I learned a lot with customer service. I was able to gain a couple other jobs thanks to my experience here. Another thing was just broadening education in aviation. I came in here not knowing too much about aircrafts, and all of a sudden I know way more than I ever expected to in my entire life. And it actually made me really interested in the field. I really would love to work here.
For more information on aviation careers education, visit the Wisconsin Department of Transportation website and enter ACE in the search bar.
All right, thank you. I am now delighted to, can everyone hear me okay? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm, I'm now delighted to introduce 3 of our former students who greatly impressed us during their time with the program and impressed their mentors as well. We'll hear a bit from each of them and ask a few questions. So let's start with Camille Pierce, an intern during its early years, who I've been hearing about since I started working with the program a few years ago. Camille, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for taking your time out and having us here. Again, my name is Camille Pierce. I was a former ACE student, 2004 year. And I had an opportunity to work for Midwest Express when we had it. I did the corporate, and then I switched over to Signature Flight Support. And that's where I really locked in and was like, okay, I think I like this better. And my passion for flying started there. So after I did that, then I went off to college, and I got accepted into Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. I did my master's there. I did flight training there. And now years passed. I'm back in Milwaukee working for MPS in the College and Career Center, and where I'm really just giving back to students and while flying on the side. So I'm still working on my private pilot's license right now, and just, moving forward every day, thanks to the ACE program, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the program. So I really, really appreciate it. That was really quick, but that's all it is in a nutshell.
Thanks, Camille. Yeah, the fact that Black women as pilots are extremely underrepresented. And so you have also worked with us on some of our activities and outreach. So I appreciate that. Now let's hear from Alexis Edwards, who I'll say really opened up the doors for us at Fire and Rescue with the ACE program. She was their first intern in a year that they wanted to try out participating in the program. And they were so impressed with her that they took on 2 interns the following year and have become some of our most enthusiastic mentors. Alexis, could you tell us a little about yourself?
Yes, my name is Alexis Edwards. Thank you for having me here again. And I participated in ACE in summer of 2016 and summer of 2017. I graduated from Ronald Reagan High School in 2017. I participated in the aircraft fire and rescue. I was their intern firefighter for both summers that I attended the ACE program. I am currently finishing up my undergrad in biomedical engineering here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And after the ACE program, I actually was able to get my EMT license, which was helped and done through like sponsorization of the firefighters at the airport. I'm currently going to be going and starting a position at Boston Sci in their quality engineering. So that's like a sum of what I've been up to.
A lot. So that's awesome. Thanks, Alexis. All right. And now we have next Isaac Wells, who has overcome tremendous challenges that he's eloquently written about publicly, including being homeless at points growing up and being in foster care, yet going on to be recognized as one of 161 high school students recognized as a presidential scholar. So Isaac, you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, yeah, my name is Isaac Wells Cage. I graduated from Ronald Reagan High School in 2019. And I did the ACE program, I think 2017, 2018. I'm not sure. It was a while ago though. And it was a great experience. I work with Textron Aviation. They're also known as Cessna Citation. They work on it's kind of like a car manufacturing and auto body shop, except on airplanes, which is kind of cool to do. And yeah, like I said, or I don't think I said this yet, but I'm at UW-Madison. I'm studying industrial and systems engineering. The goal is to, in the future, work with, I don't have like a specific thing yet, but a few different goals would be energy, aviation, or something around that sort. Right now, actually, I've secured an internship with Mortensen construction company. And recently, I think they're just finishing it up, but they were working with General Mitchell International Airport on their baggage claim. So kind of seems like I'm still revolving around this aviation thing, which is kind of cool. Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid introduction.
Yes, that was good. Thanks, Isaac. All right, I'm just going to ask a few questions for our select interns. So I'm going to start off with the question for any of the three of you to answer. What was your favorite or most memorable experience with the internship? So whoever has a particular experience that comes to mind, we can have you go first.
I can say my favorite because it happens once a year, and they would hold it for they move it up for the interns now because it usually happens at the end of August. But the live burn that happens with the firefighters, and so basically they set a bunch of fuel on fire over by E-Wing, and then the firefighters get to go and like put down the fire for a training exercise. And that was one of my favorite days because I've never really seen a real fire burning that hot, and I've never been able to actually like be a part of the process and see what happens. And it just made me fall in love with the emergency medical service field even more. And it was just so cool because everybody would like call me and be like, what's happening at the airport? Because they knew that I was there, and you could just see the smoke for like miles away. So it was one of the coolest, surreal, and favorite things that I was able to do while I was there.
Thanks, Alexis. Isaac or Camille, would you like to add to that? Either of you?
Sure. I think my memorable or awesome, exciting memory I have from the ACE program was we went to New York. I think that might have been maybe the second or third time I've ever flown an airplane. And our end of the year trip we went to New York and we saw Ground Zero and after 9/11. And that was really cool to me. And also the Midwest Express cookies. Because when I worked there, we always used to get them.
And that was, I think Midwest Express flew you there. That was part of the internship, right? That was a special thing. We don't get to do that anymore. Midwest Express, hopefully if they come back, they'll be doing that as well.
Right.
Thank you. Isaac, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I do actually. I had a couple of cool experiences. So again, I worked with Textron Aviation, and with that, I met a lot of pilots. So I was lucky enough to be able to both taxi an airplane and then kind of like, I didn't get to fly it, you know, because I don't have a license, but I was able to at least ride in a private jet with just a pilot. And I think, I don't even think the co-pilot was there. He probably was, but it was pretty personal. I thought that was awesome. It was a test flight. We flew to Green Bay, and then came back, and yeah, it wasn't an end of the year thing. It was just like in the middle of the summer. I think it had just rained the day before. That's why I remember it, because it was a really bad storm, but that's beside the point. And with the taxiing also, I just want to specify a bit about that, because I thought that was probably the best thing that I've done with airplanes so far. I got to sit in the cockpit next to the pilot, and he showed me all the buttons. It was a pretty new plane, I think. I think it was really new, actually. It was one that just came out that year, or it was supposed to be the year after or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I like technology and engineering, so I thought all those things were cool. And then he showed me all the buttons and what everything means and why everything works the way it does.
Great, thanks so much. All right, I'm going to ask this next question for Camille. Since you've been out of the program a little bit longer and have worked in education and outreach roles with students of color since then, what advice would you give new mentors about how to be a good mentor for youth of color, such as when you were in high school versus now?
You said, what advice would I give new mentors?
Yeah, what advice would you give people about mentoring students of color or others as you've worked in different roles in your career since then?
I think the advice I would give them would be, I guess as it relates to me, you have to be open-minded and open and willing to put yourself out there. Because aviation, it's a small community, but if you surround yourself around it all the time, you really think that everybody knows everything about it, or they're familiar with it, when really a lot of people aren't familiar with the industry. And so when you have a student of color and there is a mentor there to help them guide that, I think the student and the mentor, they both have to be open and willing to learn and I guess get that. It's something, I can't think of the word, but if you guys understand what I'm talking about.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, and I would love to, I have more questions for our students, and I'm delighted to have our former students who are out in the working world and university world now. But in the interest of being able to talk also with Ed Dwight, I think I'm going to see what questions we have continue to come in, but I'm going to go ahead and thank Camille, Alexis, and Isaac for what you've shared today, and we'll see what sort of time we have toward the end too. So I want to say to the three of you, thank you for joining us today, and to recognize you on behalf of the Wisconsin Department of Transportation for being outstanding Black leaders earlier on in your ACE roles and as you head into your professional careers as well. So thank you so much. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn over to Joe again to introduce Ed Dwight.
Thanks, Meredith. Appreciate it. And for those young people, and I have the privilege of calling you young because I am up in age, thank you for representing the state of Wisconsin through this program. And it looks like y'all all are in some awesome professions, and that's what we need in order to close this gap, specifically the wealth gap. And I'm looking forward to a lot of great things that you are doing. And but I have the distinct honor and pleasure of interviewing this next guest that we have. And I gotta tell you a funny story. This just happened. You know, when we first joined, we were trying to get Mr. Dwight on camera. And first thing he said was, when he saw me, he says, oh, there's a guy with a bald head. And I was like, oh, this is gonna be a good interview. I mean, because this is someone who's accomplished, but yet and still approachable. And to frame this whole thing on talking about Mr. Dwight, I really want to share a scenario that is real, that will capture the essence of really who he is as a professional, but then we'll also get into the whole thing with who he really is and what his passion is. And everyone who's familiar with Zoom, after we play the video, I will instruct you to give him a round of applause. And if we can use the emotions, let's light up the screen and give Mr. Dwight a round of applause. But I want to tell you the story. And it is this story is I'm not lying about this. This is in the Smithsonian. So I mean, if anybody's lying about it, you can go online and you can see if this is true. But in 1964, he piloted an F-104 starfighter, essentially a chrome javelin with wings so small as to seem gestural, designed to go very fast and very high, ideally in a straight line. A massive engine took up one end and the other was occupied by the pilot. As he thundered towards the sun, high roared against the fuselage, and Mr. Dwight felt a familiar lurch of passing through the sound barrier. On cue at 80,000 feet. Now, 80,000 feet is twice as what you fly commercial. He was way up there. As he bruised edge of the atmosphere and drew closer, Mr. Dwight cut the fuel to the engine. He became a mere leaf floating along the thinnest layers of Earth's air. In front of him spread the curvature of the planet with the Black Sea of space overhead. Now, this is his quote. First time you do this, it's like, oh my God, what the hell? Look at this, recalled Mr. Dwight, now 85 years old. You can actually see the beautiful blue layer that the Earth is encased in. It's absolutely stunning. And with that, we have a little treat for you. Let's give a round of applause to Mr. Ed Dwight. Hey man, it's a pleasure being with you today. I failed to mention that you said I had a suit and a tie on too instead of my jogging suit, but that's all. You need to unmute your mic, Mr. Dwight. Need to unmute yourself. Unmute yourself down below. Just scroll all the way down and you'll see a mute button down there. Unmute it. Yeah. So as he's getting that all squared away, you know, when I started getting prepared for this, yep, I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, sir.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I gotta straighten out some bad information here.
Okay. Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I wasn't talking about your bald head. I was talking about mine.
Well, you know, they say birds of a feather flock together, right?
Yeah, you got it, buddy. Okay.
How you feeling?
Well, you know, I'm actually feeling a little bit woozy, but I'm going to be all right, I think.
Okay. All right.
Once we get rolling.
You know, the thing about it is that you were telling us about some of the things that you had. That you're in Colorado now, not in Kansas City, where all of this other stuff happened, correct?
Well, you know, none of the other stuff happened in Kansas City. I mean, I was long gone away from there. I left there, in 1953, and never hardly ever went back. You know, okay. And so all this stuff happened in various places all over the continent. Okay.
So I'll start off with. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you know, the training was all over the place. It wasn't in any one place. We went to, Brooks Aviation Medicine was 3 months down in San Antonio, Texas. The centrifuge training was in Pennsylvania, and all the different kind of training was all over the country, which was really kind of cool because I got to travel a lot and meet a lot of incredible people. That's great, because the first thing I want to get into is that you've
you provided America an amazing legacy, given through what you went through and everything that you stand for. Can you share your words on how significant, you may not think about that, and I know that part of who I'm talking to is grounded in humbleness, but can you talk about that legacy that you provided to us as a nation? So as we celebrate Black history, we really understand what it is to actually set the bar high, but then understanding that you left the opportunity for others to fall behind you.
Well, I have a surprise story. I have a surprise story for you that people, take for granted. That I came up in the normal, Black community, experiencing having Black experiences and having discrimination and have all these things. And the fact of the matter is, what happened to me, I went to white schools all the way through. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that I didn't know that I was Black till I was 42 years old. And that may sound crazy, but all the experiences I had were really new experiences, and it took a while for me to understand the significance of this entire program, because Mom taught us that we were equal to white people. When we went to, she integrated white schools, white Catholic schools, for us to, get that kind of education. So I didn't come to that place understanding a whole lot of stuff weighing on my shoulders about what my responsibilities were to the Black community. But it didn't take long to for me to find out, because once that announcement was made, I was on the cover of magazines and newspapers all over the world. And I was getting 1,500 letters a day explaining all this stuff to me, pretty much. And I was within awe, really, of all the things that they said that I was doing. And whereas I didn't carry that as a weight, as a mantle, and all the things that I was doing, because the training had nothing to do with Black. To me, it didn't have anything to do with Black-white issues. Had to do with my learning what I needed to know to go into space.
Sure.
And that was what I was preoccupied with, and all this stuff, all the noise that I was hearing on the corners. I'd heard about this guy by the name of Dr. King, and I didn't know what his deal was. And that may sound really crazy too, but as a sidebar, Dr. King was dead set against my being in this astronaut program, and rightly, I didn't find out until later as to why. And the whole issue was Dr. King's whole thing was, what good does it do us to have that guy on a Wheaties box when we still can't get into a restaurant, when we still get into a motel, when we still get discriminated and can't get a job. So Dr. King was against making singular heroes where where the white community had an opportunity to say, look, you guys go back and sit down and shut up. We gave you an astronaut, so go sit down, and the hell with all this civil rights stuff. We've given you an astronaut, so go away. But I didn't get that in the beginning. It took a while for, after Whitney Young got through with me, I had more of an education.
Right.
But because he was my main mentor, and it was due to Whitney Young that I got there in the first place. So if you got any questions, I'll be happy to answer anything I can.
So, it goes back to when President Kennedy actually identified you as someone who was strongly in support of the civil rights movement, had took an interest in your career, and the symbolic achievement of both the White House and the nation, that he thought that this would be good. And he thought it would be very heavily transformative. But the first thing it tells me is that when he was assassinated, and you were asked that question in that interview as far as that piece was concerned, when they asked you, does this mean it's the end of the civil rights movement? And as a very smart young man, you answered that question with so much class and honor, where you said, I prefer not to answer that question, which then put you into a spotlight of being very well thought of as, you know, from my perspective as an African American, to really be able to think about long-term ramifications down the road. And so, you know, how can you describe the opportunity of knowing what was the count as far as racism was concerned, knowing that it was out there?
Well, this had to grow on me because I thought this thing was purely a scientific experiment, really, and I didn't find out till later, till people got began to explain to me what the significance of this whole thing was. And then when I found out the original story of really how this happened, and a lot of people don't know this, that Kennedy didn't want to have anything to do with any of this stuff, to be totally candid. He was boxed in.
Okay.
Yeah, and so what he did, he went to the Black community, to the Black leadership, saying, I need the Black vote. And he did, because he won by 100,000 votes, which were predominantly Black. But he needed the Black vote and didn't know how to get it. And so he called the leaders together when he was a senator and said, what can I do? And everybody had their deal about, King wanted open accommodations, A. Fuller Randolph wanted to integrate the railroads, each one of the, Roy Wilkins of the five. And Whitney came up with this brilliant idea because they had done some studies in the Urban League about getting Black kids into science and flying and all these other things. And it turns out that if you had a straight A's in a Black high school and submitted your application to MIT or some of these hard schools to make astronauts, they would downgrade your A to a C. And so they were not letting the kids in these colleges that make astronauts. So he came up with this brilliant idea of, look, we've got 4 military academies. And if I can stack these military academies too with all these bright Black kids. Once they graduate from a military academy, there's not a university in this country that'll turn them down for a graduate degree.
Okay.
And that's how the whole thing got started. Okay. And so how do you do it? And Whitney came up with this idea, make me a Black astronaut and give him to me. And that's in essence how the whole thing got started. And so Kennedy made the promise, but it took Whitney a year to beat him up. So you promised me. And so because he was scared to death to get involved, too much involved in this Black movement, because he thought it was going to destroy his presidential career. Because once he got tied up with Dr. King, which this would lead to, Kennedy didn't want anything to do with it. And so anyway, what he did, he said, okay, and he gave it to Bobby. And said, Bobby, do this. And Bobby Kennedy did it. He's the guy that was my, I was being handled out of the White House, by the way, during this whole period of time, which you asked me, how did I feel about this, that, and the other? And it had to do with, I was rather cocky. And the Yeager could not, and all the leadership in the science community, why is this little guy, he's a little bitty guy, and how the hell he can be so cocky? They didn't know that I was in communication with the West Wing of the White House almost every day. And so I was being advised about what is I was learning politics very, very quickly, and so I became politic, quite way ahead of my time, because I had to stay cool in all this stuff, because even if I didn't do it, if I had screwed up, the next guy would have been he would have been dog meat if I had screwed this thing up.
Yeah. So the whole personality of Edward Dwight, I know that it had to come from your parents, and I want to have a little bit of discussion about the influence that your mother had when you were in Catholic school, right? And there's a story out here that either you can confirm or you can say, I don't want to comment on that, like you eloquently did before. But let me share this. Dwight's mother, Georgia Bacon Dwight, wanted her children to attend a private Catholic high school, Bishop Ward, in the hometown of Kansas City. But Bishop Ward had an established system of white feeder middle schools and had no desire to bring in African Americans, which would likely cause existing students to leave. So at the time that it's written, you had been an altar boy since the age of 5. There were no Black Catholic high schools in the area. And your mother wrote to the First Church in Cincinnati, and they claimed have no power over the local church. And then she wrote to the Vatican and directed, and they ordered school to integrate. Woo! Your mother was bad, but hold on, this it's not the end there. Dwight admitted to Bishop's Ward, open to new opportunities, but the racial prejudice of the late 1940s and the 50s shaped experiences at the school. He integrated into high school without the National Guard, he says, but put them through training class to deal with white people, where the advice included, don't look at white girls, right? There were 850 students. First day of school, you said 300 dropped out after you showed up. So let's talk a little bit about Mother Dwight and your memories about how she shaped your life and some of the principles that you still retain today.
Well, Mom, I was the only boy out of a bunch of girls, but I had an older sister when I came along, and I was so tiny. I mean, I was just beyond tiny, and my mom was really it said, "Oh my God, this kid is not going to make it." So I think she made a decision, and she and I talked about this, that she had to cultivate this thing between my ears in order for me to survive out there in the universe, because I would never, because of my size, I would never survive normally, have a normal upbringing and stuff. So she started me at school when I was 2. And yeah. And
at 2 years old?
Yeah.
At 2 years old?
Yeah, that was a Head Start program in 1935. Mm-hmm. And they had this experiment. If you could start these Black kids early enough, could they succeed academically?
Right.
And so it was about 33 of us little Black kids running around, 2 or 3-year-old kids. And I was recruited. I was probably the first on the list, because the woman that did this was a Black PhD, Bertie Caldwell. And this whole thing was her idea, and she lived next door to me. Okay. And so as a result of this, I was her first student. And so that got me started. And I had this proclivity for art. It sounds crazy, but I was 2 years old, and I was doing art and drawing in preschool. And so I became the class artist in preschool and kindergarten, and the school artist in elementary school, and the school artist in high school, and so Mom had me from the time I was 2. She had me in every single class of jewelry making, drawing, painting, everything. The brain to hand coordination is what she was really after about, and then she got me a library card when I was 4. We had a fight to give me a library card because they didn't want to give me one because I was so young. But I became their best customer. And so I traveled all around the world from the time I was 4 years old, reading all about the great painters in the Renaissance, and traveling all around the world. It also got me into flying, by the way, because I discovered a group of flying manuals that the Army Air Corps had put out that was in this library. And as a matter of fact, I had them on permanent lend out. And I studied these aircraft manuals, weather, and everything you can possibly think of in preparation for flying. And I'd been doing this and taking these exams for 4 or 5 years with this dream state of me being a pilot in an air, because I grew up on a farm that was abutted against Fairfax Airport.
Okay, all right.
And Mom would take us out there every day, me and my older sister, and regale us with stories. And she told me all about orbital mechanics and the moon and the orbital cycles of the planets. And I mean, I was walking around. I was walking a little walking encyclopedia about all these things about space and flying. And I would go help the mechanics, work when I would hand them their tools as they worked on these airplanes and stuff. And by the time I was 9, I said, you know, I need to fly. I mean, they were giving me nickels and dimes for cleaning out their airplanes, really. And by the time I was 9, I said, I don't want any more money. I want to fly. And I got my first flight when I was 9 years old. And so I was curious about where these airplanes came from when they landed and where the devil were they going when they took off. I mean, it was just, it opened my brain and then once I flew and you could see, your whole vision is expanded when you're in an airplane, and whether it affects you when you're in a passenger plane, but when you're sitting up there in the front seat of this thing, and as you know, when you're in halfway control of something and you're looking out there and it's like the whole world is your oyster, and you can do any damn thing in the universe if you want, as long, and that's the attitude that I brought to life.
Well, one thing's for sure. Shaquille O'Neal couldn't fly a plane. That's where your size benefits you, right? So let's get into the meat of the conversation, and that is your flying experience, and really where it all started at. Not where it started at, but the epicenter of a prestigious Air Force base, which is Edwards Air Force Base. You know, it holds a legendary status then and now as a premier flight test facility for the Air Force. And now history records that you, as a test pilot at Edwards Air Force Base in the Mojave Desert of California, the U.S. Air Force premier experimental flight base and path to enter the astronaut corps of NASA. How was that like?
Well, you know, there was so much, you know, I'd been around and I had traveled internationally and I was, you know, in the Far East and I was flying. You know, by the time I got there, I had, 2,000 hours of flying time and I had flown maybe, maybe 10 airplanes, but, you know, maybe 10 different airplanes and 10 different experiences, and because each one of these airplanes had a different mission and stuff. And I was fortunate, and I really liked flying. And I was fortunate enough to every base I went on. Normally, when you go on a base, you fly the main airplane. And I was curious, so I talked to these operations guys and let me fly every plane on the base. So that helped me when they were making choices about finding an astronaut, because I had a variety of flying experiences. When I got to Edwards, I was really warned about Edwards, because there's a difference between operational flying and research flying, for research. And one of the things that are really revealing, Chuck Yeager and I had these biweekly meetings where he would tell me how white guys were better pilots than black people, and that I didn't deserve to be even in a room with some of these white guys and all kind of stuff. And I made a comment to him that really stunned him. I said, Colonel Yeager, every street on this base is named after a dead test pilot. And they're all white. Not a one of them black.
Silence. It was silence in the room.
Total. And really, because he didn't think I was that aware. I think he just thought I was really ignorant, is really what the situation was. But that attitude dominated. And he had convinced, as kind of what's happening here in 2020, this guy was convinced, because he was the, excuse me taking the liberties, but he was the Trump of that era about science and flying and all that kind of. He was the man. He was a go-to guy, and everybody paid homage to him. And here's a man that was ahead of the experimental test pilot school. Didn't even get out of high school. I mean, all the people around him were PhDs and all that kind of stuff. But here's a man that was running this thing, and that shows you how distorted this and twisted this whole thing can be about how we, die for our, we idolize our heroes. You know what I mean? And
take your time.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. So anyway, to answer your question, but it was a different kind of place. It wasn't like any other Air Force base I was ever stationed, because most of the people down there are highly educated. They're scientists, they're engineers, and they're on a mission. And the mission becomes their politic. And that there is no room for all the other things that you have on other Air Force bases. There's room for gossip, there's room for this, there's room for that. And at Edwards, no, there is no room for that. Everybody is full-time business. Sure. And rightly so, because at the end of the day, out of the 17 of us in my test pilot class, within 3 years, only 7 of us were left.
Wow.
10 of them were dead of my class 62C. It was unbelievable. And
give me that statistic. What was that statistic again?
Yeah, that was 17 in my test pilot class. Okay. Within 3 years after I graduated from test pilot school, there were only 7 of us left.
Wow.
And so it's a serious saying. As I was watching my classmates with airplanes blowing up underneath them and all this kind of stuff, is very it's very fascinating. And what I mean by fascinating, I don't mean in a good way. It's just, my God. And so you have to you come up with rationale about it. You say, well, he did something wrong. Mm-hmm. That was everybody's excuse. If an airplane blew up, or if somebody flew into the side of a mountain, naturally your first inclination is that's not going to happen to me, because I'm better than that. Sure. So it happened to him because he screwed up. And in too many instances, that's not true.
Did you find out that the reason why some of them made mistakes that cost them their lives because of the cockiness that they had on flying those aircrafts, and how they dealt with people?
That's a fascinating question. And I that's been in a part of my brain ever since I left the military. That's an interesting question, because I came to the conclusion that the answer was yes. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to believe it, but I came to the conclusion there's a swagger. Okay. And reason why, I flew with a guy by the name of Mike Adams. He was a fighter pilot in Vietnam, and Mike graduated in my class. He was one of the guys that got killed, by the way. But Mike he smoked a cigar and that whole macho thing. But I flew with Mike, and this guy had a breathing problem. And what I mean by that, we were doing acrobatics, and this guy would get into this breathing cycle. I'm going to say, man, was there something wrong with you? I didn't. No, that sounds crazy. I mean, this guy was supposedly an ace fighter pilot. By the way, he was one of the few guys that crashed in F-104 in school, but he crashed the X-15, and this noise that I heard. This is hearsay, of course. This noise that I heard when I was doing acrobatics with this guy, he flew into the ground in an X-15, just straight into the ground, and it was totally bizarre, man.
Wow.
But those are the kind of things that are coming to your space and to your mind space as you think back to what the experience was and how things all dovetail together and how they did. And I look in the mirror in the morning and say, damn, I'm the luckiest guy in the world.
Sure.
Because under these circumstances, by all odds, I should be dead today. Yeah. I should not be here talking to you.
Well, John Lewis always had this coined this phrase, a good trouble.
Yep.
And I think you had the right sentiment during your time of good cockiness. So it was all right for you to be cocky, but not to be reckless. And we're glad that you're still here, because you're able to tell us that story, and you're also able to share that legacy on what you went through during that time. I just want to remind folks that the chat box is open. I just got one more question for Mr. Dwight, and then we'll go to some of your questions before we end this thing. Once again, we're talking to Mr. Ed Dwight, the pilot that is seen to had all the credentials to go to space, but was denied to go to space. And this is just a fascinating conversation on Black History Month here at WisDOT, because we are the Department of Transportation, and as we celebrate WisDOT and also our Bureau of Aeronautics program, I couldn't think of any better keynote to actually have the interview than Mr. Dwight. So if there's any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, and then AAAC work group members will actually get me those questions. But Mr. Dwight, last question, and I think I had put out a disclosure on this one here, IFR, flying instrument versus visual. Just give me your fondest memory of something that you thought, man, I can do this thing. I'm good at what I do.
Well, IFR.
And by the way, I saw those barrel rolls in that in the video. I mean, you almost got me to dump in the wastebasket here.
Oh gosh, no, it's really funny. I don't know whether it was a gift or whatever, but the hardest thing in IFR flying is really depending on the instruments. Because you look at, we're accustomed to looking at car instruments, but we look at speed and we look at this and we look at that, and these are the things that tell us, give us messages, and the biggest problem, because I was a flight instructor for several years, okay, and so I'm trying to get these kids bridged so that I have faith in these instruments versus panicking when you pull that hood over your head, and when there's full panic, I can't see outside. My life is over, and that attitude instrument is your guide and God and your wife and your girlfriend and everything you can think of. If you believe in that attitude instrument, dude, then that's where it's all at. It just all fell into place for me. I made love to that the attitude instrument as to where I was, where the wings were, and the airspeed indicator. Between those two things, dude, that cleans it all up. And forget the outside. There is no outside.
So no, go ahead. Finish off. We have a question in the chat. Okay, so we have a question. We have a question from Matt Umhofer. He would be interested in hearing your thoughts on the confirmation of General Brown as the first United States Air Force Chief of Staff this year.
Well, it's really, really fascinating after all this time. When General Brown got nominated and got his acceptance, the Pentagon stepped out of their context and decided to bring me to Washington, D.C. and use that as a joint thing for his inauguration and my honor. So I was there for 2 days. And by the time they got through with me and partying with General Brown, and he told the story at his acceptance speech, which I thought was fascinating. He got up there and tells about his background, and he said, if it wasn't for Captain Dwight, I probably wouldn't be here because his dad was in the military, okay? And so he was in the ROTC, and he said, quit. And his dad goes, you gonna do what? Captain Dwight would be very, very disappointed that you gave up, because you promised me. And so he stayed in the ROTC, and now he's a 4- or 5-star general, okay? And he told that story at his inauguration, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the universe, for him to tell that story. But they gave me, I walked away from there, from the 2 days of them honoring me at the Pentagon. I walked away with 2 huge cartons of awards and ribbons and trophies and everything you could possibly imagine. And at the end of the day, the second day, they took me outside on the ramp at Andrews and announced to the 800 people in this crowd, senators and congressmen and company president and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, in honor of Captain Edward J. Dwight Jr., I present to you the Thunderbirds." And they flew about 6 feet off the ground right in front of all of us, man. And I just just about melted, man. I just couldn't believe it. So he and I, we spent quite a bit of time together. Now we can get some things done, in my opinion, because the head of the Air Force Academy is an African American general. So things are moving in the right direction. And anybody that has an urge or inkling, and not the military flying is the only avenue to go get flying, but it's the easiest way to get it, and then go back into the airlines after some experience. And I would recommend especially these African American students, where you can get a fair, you can get a fair shake, you can get a broad range of experiences, broad range of flying experiences. That traveling around and meeting people on an international basis widens your scope. And you can do that in the military. So most of the guys that have gotten out of the military go into the airlines and have successful careers.
So we'll wrap it up with this last question that they have, Mr. Dwight. And this is a very interesting question. The Department of Transportation, this comes from Job Sabatek. Hopefully I didn't screw up your name that bad, John, but I gave it the good college try. The Department of Transportation just moved into a new state office building here in Madison, Wisconsin. It's the opportunity in the building, complete lack of public art. Can you comment for us on why art should be included in a work environment and how art can improve a space and inspire those in its presence?
Well, when I first got, I got into art backwards. Okay, and what I mean by that, I had an inclination for making art, all that kind of stuff, and I had this huge construction company here in Denver, and I was going to my construction sites at the end of each day. In my Brioni suit, and picking up all the metal on the grounds and taking it home. And I had just bought a new house, and I decided I was going to make art to fill this house up. So I started making all these sculptures for my house. And the first Black Lieutenant Governor of Colorado, he was at a party at my house, and so they wanted a sculpture of him when he got elected. He called me to his office and said, "Ed, they want a sculpture of me for the Capitol, and I want you to do it." And I said, "George, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I weld nails together. I weld metal together. I don't do people." And he says, "Well, what's going to happen is you're going to do this. So you go to the library and get yourself a book and teach yourself how to model, because you're going to be one of the premier sculptors when I get through with you in America, when I get through with you." And Lord, then he told me a story. We've been here, Black people have been on a continent for 350 years. And he said, "Ed, you cannot go to a public venue, museum, gallery, public park, and find any Black images." And I said, "George, that's crazy, and who cares?" And he laced me over the coals about that. And so he gave me 16 books to read on slavery, and Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass and Nat Turner and everybody in the universe. I read them books, and I was 42. I had never heard of Harriet Tubman. I was 42 years old, never. And so as a result of that, you asked the question, I've done 130 memorials around this country, sculpture memorials, telling the story of Black history. And so this is so incredible, and I can tell by my feedback that I get from my fan mail and the people who follow me that this is the most important aspect of American history now, are the 130 images and the large-scale memorials that I've done in big places around this country. So having art is, especially if it's relevant art, where you can pull something out of it. You know what I mean? Having art just by itself is fine, but I do meaning art. I do story art. I tell people stories, but I like to decorate it in such a way that it attracts people to the aesthetics of it. but I want to integrate a story into it that makes them think. And lo and behold, my mail, she talks about it, especially from the kids. I get from school to school, they go on field trips, and I get inundated with mail from these little kids and their parents about the history they learned from a piece of art that I did. So it's incredibly important.
Well, let me just say that, it's been an honor and pleasure to actually interview you. Can everyone give Mr. Dwight a round of applause once again? I mean, this has really been enlightening, not only for the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, but from the Affirmative Action Advisory Committee, which we finally refer to as the AAAC. And the Secretary's office, the WisDOT Secretary, we give advice, or let's just say recommendations, to the Secretary's office, and they've been very supportive. This is the kickoff for our Black History Month. And I couldn't think of anyone better, Mr. Dwight, when we got the invitation that you were able to join us. If you can just, what I like to do is we like to follow up with you and continue to stay in contact with you, because this year, since COVID hit, this year since COVID hit, we operate in a whole different virtual world. And it's important for us to create these relationships so that we know the history. And so I'm going to wrap up this session for all DOT employees. We have 3 more virtual events that's coming up here with AAAC. We have Jason Fields next week. He is the CEO of the Madison Regional Economic Partnership. We have the following week, Women's in Government, which is Michelle Carter. She was formerly with DOT and now is over at DHS. And then finally, we're going to wrap it up with a very astute and very bright young man who just happens to be the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Wisconsin, Mr. Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes. And so with that, just key into all of our links that we have. You can go on the AAAC website in order to get the dates and times. All events start at 2 o'clock. You'll be getting bulletins prior to remind you of the next event. And we also appreciate all DOT employees who have logged on to this event. Just understand, with the support of the Secretary's office and the AAAC membership, I want to thank all of the members for getting engaged. There's nothing that we can't do together. We can do anything that's possible. And let's continue this partnership, and let's continue to move forward. Mr. Dwight, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I appreciate all your service, man.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. But thank you. You deserve your thanks, not me. Okay.
Well, it's been a pleasure. When you get excited and somebody talk about your bald head, hey, what else can you think about, So, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
All righty.
We'll see you next week.